issued this statement about Stephen Miller's retreat. Per his statement, Stephen was specifically referring to general guidance given to ICE that the extra personnel that had been sent to Minnesota was for force protection. It should be used to create a physical barrier between the arrest teams and the disruptors, and officials would be examining why additional force protection assets may not have been present to support the operation. Okay, so officials will not be examining why they committed murder. They'll be examining why they weren't standing where we thought we should have them stand. And so now both Stephen Miller and whoever is putting out the ridiculous statements for the White House cannot come up with a single line in their new statements of defense. Not one word of defense for why the killing of Alex Preddy is not a murder. He's not a domestic terrorist anymore in Stephen Miller's statements. There's no attempt in the new Stephen Miller statement to claim that Alex Preddy was not murdered. There's no defense offered. There's no attempt in the new White House statement to claim that Alex Preddy was not murdered by those agents. There's no attempt to claim the agents were justified in any way. That's because they know they would have to invent evidence that is not in any of the videos to justify the killing of Alex Preddy, which is absolutely not justifiable. Our first guest tonight says that there is, for Donald Trump and Stephen Miller, a political logic for Donald Trump's lawlessness. Tonight, the Trump White House is afraid of publicly advancing that logic. And Stephen Miller is doing his version of an apology. And the Attorney General of the United States went to Minneapolis today and did not make a public appearance there. She simply tweeted that she was there. That is as low profile as any Trump cabinet member has ever been in one of Donald Trump's invasion sites in America. Except, of course, the Secretary of Homeland Security, who is even more low profile today. She's invisible, totally invisible. In the middle of this crisis, she's hiding somewhere in Washington, maybe, and saying nothing, being allowed to say nothing, because Donald Trump has told them all to shut up. Donald Trump and his regime is in retreat tonight. Stephen Miller is in retreat tonight because the protesters are winning. Chris Hayes is doing invaluable reporting from the streets of Minneapolis today, in which he reports that there is no sensation among the people there of a reduction of tensions in Minneapolis at this point, or even a reduction in invasion forces. But remember, there are always two things about Trump world, what they say and what they do. And right now, what they are saying is that they are retreating. Donald Trump is talking about his good phone calls with the governor of Minnesota and with the mayor of Minneapolis, people who he was attacking last week. And Donald Trump is silencing Stephen Miller and keeping him out of the room. He is silencing Kristi Noem. He is silencing his attorney general today on this subject, even though she was in Minneapolis. And so they are in retreat on what they say. And that usually means that their action will follow their rhetoric. They will retreat the invasion forces from Minneapolis in the same way that they retreated from Los Angeles, and in the same way that they retreated from Chicago. They will retreat. This is a week of mourning. It should be a week of national mourning when the federal government guns down law-abiding citizens who believed that they lived in a country where the First Amendment protected them on the streets where they lived, and are now dead because they exercised that belief. Renee Good, Alex Preddy. And in this week of mourning, the National Catholic Reporter writes, quote, Catholics must decide if they serve Donald Trump or the gospel. And the National Catholic Reporter is concerned with a new Catholic, a particular Catholic, James David Vance, who has been a bit of a wanderer in the wilderness of religion in some portions of his life. He changed his name multiple times and changed his religion a few times. It was not long ago that he moved from atheism to Catholicism, possibly for political reasons before becoming a candidate. So he's new at Catholicism, and he might need more guidance now in his new religion, which might become an increasingly uncomfortable religion for him. because the National Catholic Reporter says Vice President J.D. Vance reposted Stephen Miller, who on X called Preddy an assassin and who tried to murder federal agents, a statement that is not supported by any evidence. Vance then shared President Donald Trump's lengthy and borderline incomprehensible justification of the shooting. As a Catholic, Vance could have chosen to share the gospel message of healing and human dignity. Instead, he chose to offer the MAGA message of division and blame. Vance's comments are, once again, a moral stain on our collective witness.
It happened 47 minutes ago. Representative David Schweikert walked onto a stage in Scottsdale, Arizona, for what was supposed to be a routine Saturday town hall. 12 minutes later, he walked off, not because of a scheduling conflict, not because of a medical emergency, but because his own constituents turned on him with a fury that shocked even seasoned political observers. The booing started when he defended Trump's emergency powers demand. It intensified when he dismissed concerns about NATO, and it became deafening when he told a veteran asking about Social Security that entitlement reform was necessary. By the time a retired teacher stood up and said she was ashamed she voted for him, Schweikert was visibly rattled. He tried to regain control. He raised his voice. He pointed at protesters. And then he did something representatives almost never do. He walked off his own stage, leaving hundreds of constituents shouting behind him. This was not an isolated incident. This is the fifth Republican town hall in 3 days to end in chaos. And what is driving this rage is not what you think. It is not just policy. It is betrayal. Because voters are watching their representatives defend a president who is threatening allies, demanding authoritarian powers, and facing asset seizures, while their own retirement accounts collapse from the Japan crisis. And they have had enough. To understand why Schweikert's town hall imploded, you have to understand what has been building in Arizona's 1st congressional district over the past 2 weeks. This is not a liberal stronghold. This is Scottsdale, a wealthy suburban area that has voted Republican for decades. These are not activists bussing in from out of state. These are small business owners, retirees, and professionals who elected Schweikert 6 times. But something fundamental has shifted. According to local organizers who spoke on Background, over 900 people registered to attend today's town hall. That is 3 times the normal turnout. The venue only held 400. By the time Schweikert arrived at 10:30 a.m., there were protesters outside holding signs that read, "Defend the Constitution, not Trump," and "We want answers, not excuses." Inside, the room was packed beyond capacity. Fire marshals were turning people away. The energy was tense before Schweikert even took the microphone. He opened with standard talking points: tax cuts, border security, economic growth. But when he opened the floor for questions, the first person called on was a woman in her 60s who identified herself as a lifelong Republican and small business owner. She did not ask a question. She made a statement. She said her retirement portfolio had lost 18% of its value in the past week because of the Japanese bond collapse. She said her adult son, who works in tech, just got laid off because his company's credit line was frozen. And she asked Schweikert to explain why he was more concerned with defending Donald Trump's emergency powers than with addressing the economic crisis destroying her family's future. The room erupted in applause. Schweikert tried to pivot. He said the Federal Reserve was handling monetary policy and that Congress was monitoring the situation. But the woman cut him off. She said monitoring is not a plan, and that she wanted to know if he would support legislation to stabilize credit markets, or if he was too busy protecting Trump from accountability. Schweikert's response was a mistake. He said the real crisis was not market volatility, but the fact that the deep state was trying to destroy the president through lawfare. The booing started immediately. The second question came from a man in his 70s, wearing a Veterans of Foreign Wars cap. He said he served 2 tours in Vietnam and that his son served in Afghanistan. He said Trump's comments dismissing NATO allies as staying off the front lines were a disgrace and an insult to every soldier who fought alongside coalition forces. He asked Schweikert directly if he agreed with the president's characterization of Allied casualties. The room went silent. This was the moment Schweikert could have separated himself. He could have said the comments were unfortunate or that he disagreed, but he did not. He said the president was making a broader point about burden sharing and that European nations needed to pay their fair share for defense. The veteran did not let it go. He said his son's best friend was a British soldier who was killed by an IED in Helmand province. He said that soldier was not staying back. He was dying in the same dust as Americans. And he asked Schweikert if he had the courage to stand up and say Trump was wrong. Schweikert hesitated. That hesitation told the room everything. The booing grew louder. People started shouting. One woman yelled that he was a coward. Schweikert tried to move on, but the damage was done. The third question came from a retired teacher who said she voted for Schweikert in every election since 2010. She said she was ashamed. She said she taught civics for 30 years and that she watched her students learn about checks and balances, about the separation of powers, about the Constitution. And she said she could not look those students in the eye anymore because the party she supported was enabling a president who openly talked about bypassing Congress and using emergency powers to override the Senate. She asked Schweikert if he believed in the Constitution or if he believed in Trump. The applause was overwhelming. Schweikert's face was red. He said he believed in the Constitution and that he had taken an oath to defend it. But then he said Trump was within his rights to explore all legal options to protect national security. The room exploded. People were standing. They were shouting. Someone yelled that exploring all options sounded like a dictatorship.